Welcome to the Hong Kong On Screen podcast, brought to you by Hong Kong On Screen, a Los Angeles-based non-profit organization promoting films and culture of Hong Kong.
Okay, welcome back to your Hong Kong On Screen podcast. And today I have a very special guest because it's not like the producer. I mean, it's not director anymore. Okay, but today I have a scholar, but also an industrial worker, Professor Nancy Tong. Hello, Professor Tong.
Hi, I wouldn't call myself an industrial worker.
I'm so sorry. I thought
okay.
Maybe you prefer like to be in like academia more than rather than industrial.
No,
okay,
I'm just a filmmaker and teacher.
Okay,
that's
great.
how I like to introduce myself. Yes.
Okay, so it's great. Okay, so I think you already. And then, how about can you like tell us a little bit more background about you? Like, how did you start your career into this industry? And then right now, I know that you already live in United States for a long time, right? And then, so your connection with Hong Kong. So can you tell a little bit about that background?
Okay, very
audience?
short. Very short.
Yes.
I was born in Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
Many years ago, and I studied in Hong Kong, and then I came to the United States to study college, and then I graduated in film, and that was like in the 1970s. Very few film schools, and I was very lucky to be able to study that. And then after that, I went back to Hong Kong, and I was a reporter at TVB, 無線電視台。湯美如記者報道，湯美如報道. I think that's how I end. And then I was doing bilingual because I also can do the English version of the news, but I didn't like doing news. So I begged my boss to move me to do documentary films, and I was very lucky. Then I start doing documentary films because that's what I studied when I was at college. And then after a few years, I decided I need to be back in North America. So I went to New York in 1981. And then in 1981, I started a cable TV just started, 有線電視台. And then in Manhattan, we launched a Cantonese language cable TV news, nightly news in Hong Kong in 81. So we did that for a few years. And then eventually I moved to making more documentaries with my friends who are Asian American. That was the beginning of kind of the Asian American movement. And then, very lucky too, in the late 80s, I don't know if you remember a film called 秋天的童話.
Of course.
Yes.
They just have the 4K restoration, and then they screen in LA last year, and then also this year they have a filled number of public screenings in this area.
Yeah. So because I lived in New York for a number of years and I did news, so they trusted me. So I became kind of like the whole production manager of these productions. And so I was like stepping into two territories. Part of it is documentary, part of it is fictional world. But after a while, I decided I really want to do fictional film, non-fiction film. That means documentary films because it's more close to reality, and I want to do films that reflect our society and social justice and causes like that. So then for me, documentary film is much more direct. So I did that for many years, and I was very lucky. I was able to work for PBS and HBO and a lot of really wonderful programs. And then in 1919, 2 years after Hong Kong so-called returned to motherland, so I decided, okay, I like to be a witness to see what was going on in Hong Kong. So I took a teaching job at City University in School of Creative Media, 創意媒體城市大學. And then I did that for about 8 years. And then after that, I went to Hong Kong U and joined their journalism department. And then I taught there too. So in total, I taught about maybe 19 years in Hong Kong in the college level. And I taught documentary films and also some film theory, documentary film theory. And then in 1990, 2019, I decided to retire and then came back to New York. And then, but that was before what happened in Hong Kong, the protest movement. And then, I decided to return to Hong Kong several times during those very important days, like July 1st, October 1st, I was in Hong Kong, 2019. And then even during COVID, I would return to Hong Kong and I would stay 2 weeks in quarantine in some hotel. Because the reason I want to be in Hong Kong during that period is I knew then that Hong Kong is going through a very, very critical time of its history. And also the other point is that there were a lot of young filmmakers, young journalists who were shooting, who were recording, documenting what was going on in Hong Kong. And a lot of them really did not have experience in making long-form documentary films. They could be working on TV for, let's say, 25-minute shows, like for RTHK, or for, foreign TV stations like BBC, on programs on Hong Kong. But these are more news stories. And for documentary films, it's totally, totally different. So some of them approached me and then asked me to help them in conceptualizing and also in structuring the piece and the approach. So that's how I kind of got involved. And I went back to Hong Kong several times, and we would meet in my hotel room, and they will bring their computer and they will show me the footage that they have, and then we'll discuss them. And a few of them actually we will continue to work together over the years until they finish the project. Yes. So
wow, that's a fascinating whole background. Okay, actually the introduction is not very short. Okay, but it really gave me a lot of information and detail, and then that's really explained a lot of my curious about your role in the movie. Yeah, so let me tell the audience.
Now we can end the interview, right?
No, not yet. I still have some other question. Okay.
I'm kidding.
The reason I invited you to join me in this podcast is because there's a new movie called Rather Be Ashes Than Dust, 寧化飛灰, which is kind of released last year, but we are some of the volunteer in other group of the people in LA, they are organizing a screening and in December 14 at the Whittier Starlight Village Cinemas. And then I know Professor Tong is coming for a Q&A for that screening. So audience, okay, if you haven't purchased a ticket, please remember to check the screen time, okay? Screen day is December 14 at Whittier Starlight Village Cinemas. So actually, I know, okay, even besides Rather Be Ashes Than Dust, 寧化飛灰, I know Professor Tong also participate in another 2 movies. Actually, it's also kind of related to the 2019 movement. The first one is Denise Ho, Becoming the Song. So it's about a singer, Denise Ho, or HOCC. And then another documentary called Faceless was released in 2022. I watched both of the film. For Faceless, actually, it was in the LA, Los Angeles, American Pacific Film Festival. Okay, I think that is one of the biggest film festival about Asian community in LA. And the audience actually at that day, it is kind of full house. Yeah, and then I think I brought my family. My parents actually also watched the film, and then we didn't leave the theater after all the credit gone, because a lot of others audience all stay there. We kind of heavy, so we kind of have some small discussion even though after the Q&A section, a short that. And then, so I really remember. And then, but at that time, I don't know, Professor Tong actually is also involved in that movie. So, but I checked the role, okay? And then in all this film, your role in that, the title for that is executive producer. So I know probably maybe in your very long introduction, it kind of already touched on that role, but can you still, okay, I think a lot of our podcast listener, they really want to know about what is executive producer. what's the role of that? And then if some of our listeners, they are kind of like a very new filmmaker, or maybe they are going to graduate, because we actually have a lot of like USC volunteer, they are film school students, and then probably maybe they want to know about this executive producer. What's your role, and then what kind of thing that you're doing? Yeah.
Well, executive producer, there are various kinds of executive producer. There are executive producer who put out the money, and there are executive producer who are involved in the project in more of a creative role. So I'm the second type because I don't have money. I don't have much money. And so I really cannot put out a lot of money. But I do work pro bono for free in a way of helping, as I said earlier, in conceptualizing, and also in helping find what is the most important message in the film, what is the core, message of the film, and who are the audience that we could reach. Because I've been doing this for many years, for decades. So I kind of know how, because, when you make a film, a lot of younger filmmakers, they don't know, okay, after I finish the film, how do I get it out there for people to watch them? Okay, so there is a process. How do you distribute? How do you promote the film? So that is, I've been doing this for many years. So not only in conceptualizing, and also in structuring, and in the editing process, I help them structure and then find. Very important is find the voice of the filmmaker. Documentary films, a lot of people think that when we make documentary films, you just document reality. No, it's not. Documentary films, there is very strong perspective, very strong point of view from the director. And, the difficulty in it is that how heavy-handed you want to, how much of your signature, your voice do you want to be in there, right? So that is something we explore. And then that is during the editing. And I also try to put the team together. If they need a composer, if they need editors, if they, need all this extra help, I will help them find these people. Sometimes I help them negotiate a better fee, because sometimes you work with professional people. They try to get the most of, of the budget, but sometimes we can't afford it. Independent filmmakers cannot afford it. So that's where I come in to help them negotiate some of these deals. And then when the film is finished, then I will help them get into film festivals, tell them which are the better film festivals, and then at the end also in helping to promote and distribute the film. So that is kind of my role. Yeah.
It's great. Okay. It's very, very important, actually, this job, especially for those new filmmakers, once just after they graduate, and then they are quite new to the industry. And also, I think to those filmmakers who originally based in Hong Kong, and then probably maybe they don't have the network in the United States, right? So I think your role is very, very important. But however, okay, so I just mentioned about the first film in 2020, Denise Ho Becoming the Song. And then I know the director, Sue Williams. And then she's actually is a very experienced, and then I think she's already quite famous in the field. And, because my original major is political science. And then for us, this field, I still remember, okay, kind of like my first class in my Chinese politics class, okay, we are assigned a documentary called China, A Century of Revolution. And then this documentary, yes, 3 episodes, every of the students from poli-sci, we kind of like, not only we have to watch it, but we kind of like always need to remember, like to talk about this film, right? Always reference to this film. So how about what's your role in this Denise Ho Becoming the Song? Because when you already have a very experienced director in that.
Yeah. Well, with that film, I was more like the Hong Kong film coordinator. So, as you said, Sue is already very experienced, and she had also filmed in China. But Hong Kong, I don't think she had worked in Hong Kong before. So basically, she invited me to come in to help her with the logistics in the Hong Kong filming. So basically, that's my role. I wasn't that much involved. I wasn't the executive producer. I think my title was line producer. Line producer means that, I work with the director, and Sue is the director and the producer. So I am basically kind of her assistant in that role. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I see. Got it. Okay. So how about Faceless? I know the director, she originally based in UK, right? And then she's quite new. And then finally, I think this film is quite successful. It's not only entered to some film festival but also it's successfully sold to Vice. Okay. I think it's kind of like quite a big thing to this type of film, because not a lot of Hong Kong documentary related to 2019 they successfully could find a distributor in the United States. So how do you do that? And then what's the selling point for Faceless?
Yeah, my role in Faceless is different. Every film, my role is different. With Faceless, Jennifer. I think I met Jennifer years before 2019. And so Jennifer is the director, and she's based in Hong Kong, and she was working for BBC at the time. And I think during the 2019, she decided to take a break from BBC just to work on this film. So I was in Hong Kong, and I remember she contacted me, and she's one of the directors that we met at my hotel, basically. And she showed me the footage. And this would be 2020, and she wasn't sure at that point whether she had a film. And she had a lot of material. And this was mostly coverage of the protests, and she also focused on a few young people who were protesters. And I encouraged her, and I said that, yes, there is a very important story there, and that her characters are very compelling. Each of their stories are different but compelling. And so I encouraged her, and so she then later got some funding. She's very, very good in fundraising. So she didn't need my help in that area. So she got some funds, and she and her partner, a producer. So they formed a team. They also were editing the film in Chicago. So I went out to Chicago for a few days to look at the rough cut. And I gave them some directions as to what are some of the most compelling scenes and how do you structure that? How do you build certain drama? And, like films, documentary films or fiction films or whatever films, they always have to have some kind of drama in there in order to sustain the audience attention. And to build this kind of drama, there are certain techniques to it. So I was pointing out how to do that. So that's kind of my role in that film. And they decided to give me the title of executive producer, which I really, really appreciate, is because Jennifer felt that I was the one who really, at the very beginning, was encouraging her to make this film, and also later on to support her and to try to, get it finished. So that's my involvement with that film. Yes.
So the film finally sold to Vice. You didn't involve in that process, right? How did they?
No, I wasn't involved in that process. No.
Okay. No. Okay. Yeah. So let's talk about the most recent film, and then I think that one is the key that I invited you to do this podcast. That is Rather Be Ashes Than Dust. 寧化飛灰, and the director is Alan. So how about briefly tell us, okay, what's your role in this film?
Well, Alan was my student like 20 years ago at City University. And he was like 20 years old at that time. And after he graduated, we still kept in touch. And he had a couple of projects that I helped him find funding at RTHK. At RTHK in the year 2004, 2005, they have a commission program. And so I kind of helped him and secure some of the funding. So in a way, we have kept in touch all these years. And when he had, in 2019, when all this happened, he was, I know that he told you already, probably, that he was working for German news, online news. So yes. He had all this footage. And I was in Hong Kong 2020, and he showed me the footage again in my hotel. And I said, my God, there's like amazing footage. And he was so good. He is always, he is such a great camera person. And he always knew what to capture. Even when the whole place was chaotic, when things were exploding, he would be able to keep, his focus and his balance, and he would just concentrate on shooting. That is very rare. Okay. So you can see that in the footage that he was shooting. And because he gave me 2 hard drives to take back to New York with me. And so one night I was watching the footage in my New York apartment, and for 45 minutes I was so focused on the image. I was basically quite shocked, and I was emotionally very, very engaged with the material. And then I forgot to turn off the faucet in my kitchen. So I flooded my whole apartment.
Oh, wow. That's really...
I flooded my whole apartment. Can you imagine that? Yeah. 45 minutes, the water was pouring into my apartment, and I didn't hear it because I was hearing the material. So after that, I called Alan, and I said, Alan, this is what happened to me. And your material will have the same effect on your audience. And I said, you have to do something. Now, this was in 2021, I believe, or 22. And he was suffering really severe PTSD. He was already in UK. He was, and I urged him. I thought of several things. I even I was actually a little anxious because I know that if you wait another few years, nobody will care about Hong Kong anymore. And already I know that there are a few films out there, and so, but his material was just too important to just, not do anything about it. So once in a while, I would send him an email, say, what's happening? What are you doing? How are you doing? And I would talk to him and make sure that he's okay. So then he started working on it. And so, and he would send me a script, and we will go through it, and then I will give him some directions and some advice, and that's how we got involved. Yeah.
You already mentioned there's already quite a few numbers of this type of movies, documentary cover this protest and then the movement in 2019. Mm-hmm. So when you cooperate, co-produce with, not cooperate, okay, co-write, co-edit with Alan. Have you ever thought that, okay, how can I make this film actually even better than the previous, all those films? So have you in your mind, or what do you think about that?
Already I knew that because the footage that he was shooting for a news station. So he didn't do a lot of interviews, right? So unlike Faceless and other documentary films, he really didn't have a focus on a character. There was no strong character. And for every documentary films or any films, you need a focus. You need someone to lead you into the story, right? So if he doesn't have that, and just to show people the footage itself, he will need a narrator. But I didn't want a narrator like a news narrator to explain what was going on, to inform people what was going on. And I thought that it would be much more impactful if he can tell people of how he felt during this whole process. So I advised Alan to write a script based on his perspective and his journey. More importantly, of how he felt when he was filming. Because I know Alan, he is a, how should I say? Alan is a very, he is very wise beyond his age, put it that way. He is very thoughtful person, and in 廣東話係叫做好深沉嘅一個人，一個好實在、好深沉嘅人。So I know that while he was filming this, he must have go through personal struggle. And I said, did you keep a journal? Did you write things? And he said, yes, he had kept some journal. I said, go back to your journal and then find some passages and go back and then find how you felt. And then start writing using that memory. Okay. You have to kind of what we call harvest. You have to harvest all your memory and then start that approach. Because I know that this kind of film is not easy to make, because the filmmaker has much more stake at it. You are revealing your deepest thoughts, and you are actually putting more of yourself in the film. You're no longer just observing, right? You are telling the world how you felt. Mm-hmm. And that is not easy. Mm-hmm. But it's amazing that Alan was able to do that in such a honest, I think, a truthful and honest way. And I think that is why this film has touched so many people. And this film has been invited to a lot of film festivals, and also, and good for Alan, winning awards and everything. And I'm so happy for him. And I think because the audience are genuinely moved by this film.
Yeah, it's so true that compared to other documentary, like on the same topic, I also really feel like you just mentioned about it. It's really kind of like inside, very deep heart to tell you about the feeling. And then compared to other documentary, like for example, one documentary try to explain to you about the movement day by day, right? About the process. And then another documentary probably maybe they pick up some, for example, like Faceless. They have a few key actor, like activists, right, in the movie, and then through their eyes to tell you about what's going on with the movement. And then, but for rather be ashes than dust, I feel like it's really internal. And then I think the word you just try to use Cantonese to describe about Alan, I think in English probably is very reserved. He's very reserved. And then, but right now, I think you really try to help him to reflect those inside feeling out and then telling out. And then I think that is really touch on me. So, after I finished watching the screener, immediately I already sent an email to Alan, said, I need to talk to you. I really want to know more about the whole process. And then after I finished like talking to him, and then I said, I also want to talk to you. And then he said, yes, you definitely, because he told me you actually help him a lot, especially, okay, so I think this is also my next question. That is, okay, so this movie compared to other very different is, I feel like this movie kind of like 80% of them, not only Alan in English, but I think most of the interview or like the editing thing is also in English. So this movie kind of like English-oriented movie, even though the topic is about Hong Kong, but it doesn't really look like Hong Kong movie, because compared to other Hong Kong documentary, I mean the documentary, like primarily the language is is in Cantonese, but this one obviously, okay, of course, okay, Faceless is kind of like also a lot of English, but I think this one is really, you try, okay, because Alan tried to use he himself, right, speak out, okay, by using he talk in English. So this is also your strategy that right now you think we no longer like required to continue like repeating to make some movie in Cantonese targeting our Hong Kong audience? Right now we actually need to expand or like kind of like go back to a Hong Kong government, they say, okay, we need to tell Hong Kong story better, right? Tell a good story about Hong Kong. So is it English? It should be our focus in the future.
No. That's not our point. I think, language is important in the way of who are the audience you want to talk to. And I think that because, as you said, all the other films on the Hong Kong 2019 are in Cantonese. And we felt that, for one thing, is if we want a global audience, it might work better in English. And secondly, I think, as you mentioned earlier, that I think the struggle of what we are facing, Hong Kong people, is no longer a Hong Kong issue, no longer a Chinese issue. It is a global issue. And the thing about documentary films is a term what we call a long shelf life. News stories, they will last maybe a week. They talk about what happened today. But documentary films, some of the best documentary films that people are still screening is over 100 years old. And that is because documentary films really talk about humanity and our struggles and who we are. And so, I think that maybe perhaps if we make this documentary in English, it might have a much more global audience and a much longer shelf life. So that's the approach we decided. And we discussed it, and Alan agreed that he would like to do it in English. And so I helped translate his thoughts, and what he wrote down into English. And so that's the approach we took.
So originally he wrote in Chinese, then you do the translation. Yes. I see. Okay.
He had someone translate it for him. Mm-hmm. And I edited all the translation. Also, I added, I intensified some of his thoughts and some of the things that he wanted to say. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And then, like I already mentioned, like 3 films that you involved. Okay, Denise Ho about Ho Wen Si, Faceless, and then also this 寧化飛灰. And then it looks like to me all these 3 documentary, they are really kind of like you already mentioned, that is about human story, right? They are like compared to other documentary, I know I don't know, okay, but other news story from CNN Frontline, they also make a few documentary about the 2019. But this 3, I can find out one common like element that is really focused on the people, about the very individual about their feeling toward to the event around them, right? So this is like you prefer, like this is your most favorable method to making documentary? I know that's a problem. Maybe there's a lot of other ways to make documentary, but this is your most favorable because you are very focused on the human story, and then you think focus on the individual, their thought, their feeling, and then action is very important in documentary telling.
This is not just my, how should I say, it's not just my focus, but I think all good documentary films that people can relate to, that actually people will remember, will have to be very honest and also direct with their feelings. And it also have to relate to some very primary emotions that we all have. And I think, so these 3 films share the same component, I think. And in all my other films too, I made a film many years ago on Nanking Dai Tuk Sa, the rape of Nanking. It's called In the Name of the Emperor. And that was done in 1994, before people even start thinking about Nanjing and the Japanese invasion of China. In that film, I also focus on the witnesses, American witnesses of the massacre. And also I interviewed a comfort woman, a Wei Anfu. And again, the passages and the interview that I select from them are talking about how they feel and about how the horror of war impacted them on a very human level. So, and I think for films to, as I said, make an impact, you have to do that. You have to look at what is most important thing about how we live, about, you know, survival, about love, about, you know, all these things we all feel. So how do you share these kind of feelings? How do you use the character in your film to reveal these very, very important emotions? And only through this that your audience will really get into your film and get very engaged in your film and your subject matter. Yeah.
Okay. Very, very good. Okay. Thank you so much for your answers to this very important question. And then, so I know that when you and Alan like make this Rather Be Ashes Than Dust, both of you actually not in Hong Kong. So can you tell me, do you have any kind of a difficulty, like when you really making a film about Hong Kong, but you are actually physically not in Hong Kong? Is there any difficulty, or you think it's totally fine? That's no, okay, because it's
totally fine, because sometimes a little detachment is even better. You are a journalist, right?
Yeah, so I was. Yes.
Yeah. So you understand that all journalists, you have to be a little bit detached, or else if we are so involved in it, we can't see it clearly. So and that is, you know, in fact, you know, where you edit the film, it doesn't matter. You know, I've been editing films in an office. I've been editing films in my home, and so you know, in different places. You know, you can throw me in the desert, give me a computer and a Wi-Fi and some power, and I can edit a film there too.
Okay, and then I think it's kind of like my final question. You know, Hong Kong government tried to promote a concept that is, okay, we need to tell a good story about Hong Kong. So you are a film producer, right? And then you are also a filmmaker. So what do you think? Okay, how could you respond to this like slogan or like a policy promoted by the Hong Kong government? How can we tell good story?
Hong Kong government is run by bureaucrats, okay? And bureaucrats can only think of promotion. You know, they want to make commercials, promotion to promote Hong Kong. I don't know. Are these stories honest stories? Does that really reflect what people in Hong Kong are feeling? Does that reflect the diversity of Hong Kong, and also the economic struggle of a lot of Hong Kong people? I don't think they think that way. When they think a good story of Hong Kong, they think that is a story that is sweet.
So do you think Rather Be Ashes Than Dust is a good Hong Kong story?
Oh, yes, definitely
Of course,
a good
right?
Hong Kong story, right? But they don't see it as a good Hong Kong story. They see that is a bad Hong Kong story because it reflects badly on the government officials. Mm-hmm. And reflect badly on how they actually ruined the city. And
but at least this is our version of good Hong Kong story. This is our version of good Hong Kong story, right?
I wish I could make very good Hong Kong story. Mm-hmm. I wish I could make. I make a really good Hong Kong story on how Catholic nuns, have educated all these amazing women in Hong Kong, and taught us how to be generous, how to how to be grateful, how to be good people, and I think, we have good stories like that, but that's only one side of the story, right? So, yeah.
So as a overseas Hong Kongers, what do you think? What can we do in this Hong Kong story? So are we, like, right now, both of us, okay, right now we are not in Hong Kong, physically not in Hong Kong, but we still have a very strong identity of Hong Kong. I don't know you, okay, but I'm still have a very strong identity about I'm a Hong Konger. So what do you think, okay, as an overseas Hong Konger, what can we do to continue about this good Hong Kong story?
That's a very good question. I think it's a, how should I say it? It's not an easy answer, but I think it's very important that we support each other, and we never forget that we have, if we unite together, we can have a very strong voice and a power wherever we are, whether we are I'm in New York, you in LA, Alan's in London. Nowadays, distance doesn't matter anymore, right? As long as we have the same focus. I think the most important thing is we have to have a focus and we have a strategy of what we want to do. And we have to look long term. Right now, of course, especially this week after the Hong Kong court, the judgment of the legislator because of the by-election, all of us are kind of depressed. I was depressed for a whole day. But I mean, we knew this was going to come. We knew that there's no way that we can fight this. But we have to look long term, and we cannot lose hope. Okay. And because where will the hope comes from? The hope will come from us working together, and also from letting other people know, especially young people, your children, okay? My grandnieces and grandnephews, they are born in Canada and US. They are more identified as Americans or Canadians or British or Europeans or Australian. But at some point, they will see their root. Everybody will want to look for their root. And that is when we will know that there will be changes. Young people is our future, and we have to continue to tell the Hong Kong story for the young people, so they'll know why their parents came here, why we chose to live here and not in Hong Kong. So that for me, I think is what we have to look forward to. We can't look back. Okay, we can't look back, but we can look forward.
Thank you so much, Nancy, Professor Tong, today. Very touching, okay? I totally agree with that. Working together, don't divide us, right? And then we support all of us. And then so, listener, please purchase a ticket, okay, to our screening on December 14th. And then we are looking forward to seeing all of our audience, right? Nancy, Professor Tong,
thank you,
and
Kay.
You will be here. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure today, and I really hope to see all of you, and it will be in just a few weeks, right? So
yeah, a few weeks.
3 weeks, in 3 weeks actually. Exactly,
yeah.
right? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.